Welcome to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we trade in personal finance advice for entertaining conversations about money. And I'm convinced that by the year of 2030, the NFL will convert to a passing league just like rugby. Welcome, world, to yet another episode of Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. And I can't get my intro right, but I will tell you, I need to step on a soapbox straight off the top on this episode, Malcolm.
Give it to us.
The NFL is confused.
Okay.
With itself.
The No Fun League?
The No Fun League. Yes, that's what you want to call it. My rant at the very top of this show. Sometimes I run conspiracy theories of my own through text threads with friends.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've been testing on my friends is, will the NFL be around as it's currently constituted years from now? And I'm convinced after watching a little bit of football, Clay Matthews hitting people and getting called for falling on top of someone, that the NFL is just confused. So do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
What are your thoughts on this whole, like, you can hit somebody, but not really?
I think everybody else is confused.
Okay.
I think the NFL has it very well clearly figured out.
Okay.
They are protecting their number one product.
Right.
What jersey do little kids buy when they go to the pro shop to buy a jersey?
Quarterbacks.
The quarterback.
Absolutely.
Who do you turn the channel and say, I'm not going to watch that game because X isn't playing?
Right.
The quarterback.
Right.
Tom Brady was out for all of,
it was like
I can't
a
remember
season
what
or two. It was season or
13, 14?
Yeah.
Matt Castle comes in. The New England Patriots go 11-5 and nobody cares.
Right.
Because Tom Brady's not on the field.
Right.
Why is Tom Brady not on the field? Somebody lunged at his knee, tore his ACL. He can't play football anymore. The very next season, what happens? There's a rule against hitting quarterbacks low.
Below the knee.
Aaron Rodgers goes down.
Right.
Somebody lands on top of him. He breaks his shoulder, and he can't play.
Right.
So now the following season, what happens? Landing on top of the quarterback is now an offense.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the NFL caring whether you want to see flags on stupid penalties or not.
Right.
It has everything to do with the NFL saying we are going to protect our number one product. We only have 32 of these guys. And we're going to protect them at all costs, even if it means a few feathers get ruffled,
right.
a few defensive players call us out, and the fans like you don't like it, but you keep watching.
Right.
You're going to keep watching for Aaron Rodgers.
Now, I don't know if I'm going to keep watching. And let me tell you something. When I found out the language for the particular rule that got changed about roughing the passer, which
it didn't get changed, though.
It didn't get changed?
They just now started enforcing it.
In the way that it's written.
Right. It's been written.
Okay. So for me, the thing, I think it says, well, I'll just read a portion of it. I actually pulled it up. A defensive player must not unnecessarily or violently throw him down and land on top of him with all or most of the defender's weight. What sport are we playing? That's like saying you can't touch somebody in a wrestling match. So to me, it just underscores, like, so this is my conspiracy theory part. To me, it just underscores how unsafe of a game it is at all.
I don't know.
To me, that's what it underscores.
It's not the gladiator sport that it once was. I'm
Right.
with you on that. The challenge I have is that it's so unfairly lopsided. If I'm a player,
Right.
Like there's a guy that plays for Miami. I can't remember his name. He wears number 93. He plays defensive tackle. He was going to make a sack on the quarterback, and then it flashed into his mind that he better not let his full 350 pounds land on this quarterback, or he's going to get a fine.
Right.
He tries to move, bangs his knee on the ground, tears his ACL.
See.
Do I care more about that guy than I do the guy he was going to tackle? Why are they not?
Right.
You know, so that kind of creates an issue for me if I'm a player. Like, how am I supposed to do my job because you want that guy to be able to do his job better than me? Like,
Right. You know what the end result for me is? I'm going to a soccer game on Saturday, and I'm really excited about it because I feel like that's going to be my new number one sport, aside from, of course, rooting for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Until they try to get the concussions out of soccer. And then now you got another problem.
Indeed. Well, we've been talking about sports, but this is a show called Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. This episode is about hot headlines at the end of summer, Malcolm. We're at the time when the sun starts going down earlier. So we thought we'd take a moment to kind of review some of the hottest headlines. And we just went through the NFL as a headline and what's going on with their rules and how they don't realize they're a contact sport. But in other headlines, as we always do, Nike sales defy Kaepernick ad campaign backlash. Lots of people have heard about this. This was a September 2018 piece that I pulled from BBC News and pretty much everywhere else.
Right.
Nike released an ad featuring athletes of all stripes, including LeBron James, Serena, and a couple other people. The other guy from the Seattle Seahawks who plays with one hand. It was narrated actually by Colin Kaepernick. Immediately after, online sales grew by 31%, and that was over a holiday weekend after the ad launch, and that was according to a researcher Edison Trends. I know people who suddenly felt inspired to buy Nike stock. We do a whole show about money and managing your money, but what inspired them was this ad to go buy stock. So I'm like, well, what are we doing here? But
I will say, though, the first stock I ever owned was Nike.
Well, that's right.
It had absolutely nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick. But it just, since everybody's jumping on the bandwagon suddenly, I want to throw that out there.
Indeed. And upon release of the campaign visuals, some took to social media to express pleasure and or discontent, the latter by lighting their Nike shoes on fire, which has become a popular thing since LeBron did the first decision all the way back when he left Cleveland the first time. People need to stop doing that. It's super played out.
Did you see the person who lit the shoes on fire while they were still wearing them?
Yeah, and his feet were all burned up. Yeah. Just
anyway.
Unfortunate. And then some reactions in the wild was what I wrote here. And what I meant was there were some reactions that happened immediately after. One of them was from the Times-Picayune on NOLA.com. Reported that Nike purchases have been banned from Kerner recreation programs. The Louisiana city of Kerner mayor Ben Zahn issued a memorandum demanding that the city's recreation department and any booster clubs operating at its facilities no longer purchase or accept delivery of Nike athletic products or any apparel that features the company's famous logo. And this was somebody who was the mayor for a city in Louisiana. It's kind of funny.
Like, where do you even start with that?
Right. The I guess the declaration or whatever it was said, under no circumstances will any Nike product or any product with the Nike logo be purchased for use or delivery at any city of Kerner recreation facility. This was according to the memo, which is an official mayor's office. It was on an official letterhead for the mayor, and it was signed by Zahn. It makes no direct reference to the Nike campaign. This was a couple weeks ago now. But a Kerner councilman from the same city, Gregory Carroll, responded to the memo in a public Facebook post where he said, I was not made aware of this decision beforehand, and it is in direct contradiction of what I stand for and what the city of Kerner should stand for. I'm 100% against this decision. I will meet with the mayor and other council members in an effort to rescind this directive. So Malcolm, we've discussed taking corporations, that is, taking a reactive stance to social issues. Recently, this is all recent stuff, CBS executive Moonves was removed from his position after additional sexual allegations came up on him. Uber is trying to repair its image through feel-good advertising after it had leadership and is still kind of struggling with some internal issues. And then, of course, we've also seen recently airlines denouncing family separation policies and asking the government not to use their flights to separate families. These are all off the top of my head when I was writing the show.
Sure.
But this is the first truly proactive stance I've seen a company take, I think, on any kind of social issue. We don't have to go through the history of what happened with Colin Kaepernick.
But it's not the first time you've ever seen Nike go this route.
Really?
Nike has had a history pretty much since their inception of going after the not radical's not the word I want to use, but the rebel.
Okay.
They've been going with the think about the old Michael Jordan sneaker commercials with Spike Lee in them.
Right.
The Mars Blackman commercials.
Okay.
Or Venus and Serena Williams, these two young black kids from Compton with beads hanging off their hair, flapping everywhere.
Right.
And Nike was their first major
endorsement
sponsor.
Yeah.
And so they were the counterculture to tennis.
Right.
Michael Jordan with his hoop earring was the counterculture to basketball. Like, it became like this thing where Nike aligned itself with people who were not necessarily going against, but they were outliers.
Sure.
And so they've always kind of had this thing, from their marketing perspective at least, of going in that direction.
Right.
This was just maybe the first time that they just blatantly threw it in your face and said, this is where we stand.
And I think that, like I said, I think in that way it was a very out there decision and choice. Are you surprised that sales spiked?
No. I mean, if you think about who Nike's main purchasers are,
right?
They're young black kids, probably 17, 18 years old,
right,
who buy a $150 pair of shoes every month from Nike. Right. Not the old guy who's complaining and saying he's going to boycott, and his wife buys his shoes from Kohl's on the super duper duper discount rack.
Right.
No disrespect to Kohl's, but they're Kohl's, right? So, like, those shoes cost $40 and you're going to buy them once every 2 years.
Right.
Nike isn't making any money off of you.
Right.
They're making money off of the kids that look up to Colin Kaepernick, who own 14 versions of his jersey. Right. Like, so they know where their bread was buttered in the first place. They're not worried about the folks who are quote unquote protesting.
Right. Now, an interesting thing, curveball that I'm going to throw at you. Many people feel good and vindicated about Nike doing this, but Nike, which I know you're probably aware of, Malcolm, has been in hot water itself about its internal culture and employer habits. How do we square these kinds of social campaigns with the real life things that are happening in these companies? Where we're in a social climate where things are trying to shift towards a more equal society. Like, Nike's doing this thing that's very, out there, and a lot of people feel great about it. But internally, they're dealing with some of the very same things that, are the result of the conflict with Colin Kaepernick.
I wonder, right? Like, I wonder if, on one hand, they're doing this to distract from what's happening internally.
I wonder who taught us how to do that.
And so because folks are now talking about Colin Kaepernick and your sales, if nothing else, you knew they weren't going to take a hit.
Right.
You maybe not knew they were going to spike, but you knew they wouldn't take a hit. So if maybe you say we're going to align ourselves with Cap and this is going to be the thing to get everybody's attention off of the folks in the house acting a fool, then maybe that was the decision. Or maybe it was a thing where you would have been seeing more campaigns like this from creative people inside the company if they were allowed to have a voice before the folks who got in trouble got pushed to the side. Right. So we really don't know, but fortunately for them, it's worked out for them versus a Papa John's who we love to beat up on this show, who, I don't know if you heard, they're even considering changing their name, by the way.
Wow.
But it went the opposite direction of a situation like that. So I don't know. I mean, we'll find out, right? Eventually, all this stuff will start to trail out once it's been settled. And
and the backstory, if you're not familiar with it, there was a claim filed against three major Nike shareholders, which alleges Phil Knight, the co-founder, Mark Parker, who was the CEO, and Trevor Edwards, who was the brand president, that the company's board facilitated and knowingly ignored the hostile work environment that has now harmed and threatened to further tarnish and impair the company's financial position. That was from a story I pulled from September 2018. So Nike, for all the praise that it's gotten on the campaign it decided to release, is still struggling with some of these very real social issues internally, and I felt like it was important to bring that up because it's not like all feel good. It's like there are actual issues behind it as well. And then my last question before we go to our first music break, Malcolm, I think this feels like the moment where Nike has put us now in the place where companies have to take a stance. There's no longer an apolitical thing. You can't be apolitical as a company anymore. How do you see social issues driving or slowing business for companies in particular?
See, I kind of disagree. I think you still are allowed to be apolitical.
Okay.
I think you aren't allowed to be a idiot. So, like, if you look at Uber, for example, Travis Kalanick getting in trouble for literally verbally abusing, like berating employees in front of other employees.
Right.
Now, that isn't a thing where you had to be apolitical or political.
Right.
Like him deciding to back Trump and be on the council and all that stuff, that's as political as it gets, right? But on the flip side, his first strike was him being a terrible boss.
Right.
So those are things that, like, you know, you don't even have to take a political stand one way or another. You just have to not be an idiot.
Right.
But then when people find out that you have a terrible work environment and you are the cause of it,
Right.
either you go or I stop using your product. People are very apt to vote with their dollars now as consumers. And so you've got to be well aware of that and say, you know what, if I'm not capable of handling myself as a 35-year-old man at that time he was,
Or like
and
60
acting like
like
I have
Papa
some
John's.
sense,
Right.
like maybe I should step aside.
Right.
Maybe I should not hurt my stock price because my overall net worth as an individual person
Right.
it's tied to how well I can get along with the people in this company. So I'm just going to get out the way.
Right.
Because obviously I don't know how to act like I have some sense.
I can't handle it.
Right.
That's hilarious. Well, we hope we can always handle it here on Manager Damn Money. We want to remind people you can always catch past episodes of the show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, please leave us a review and give us a rating on any of those platforms. That helps more people catch the show. And if you want to send us a question or you have a topic you want us to cover, send it to us, info@managerdamnmoney.com. And you can always catch us on social media. My handle is @MYDM1. Malcolm, what's yours?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, that's on Twitter and on the gram. And of course, you can always catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/managerdamnmoney. This is MYDM with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manager Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we are discussing hot headlines for the end of summer. Malcolm, we just got through talking about Nike, the Colin Kaepernick ad, which was like a really big deal for a while. Our next headline, the 3 benefits millennials are demanding from employers. This was from a September 2018 piece on Forbes.com by Paris Wallace. It is like that time of year where people start thinking about like end of year reviews and things like that. With millennial talent making up more than 1/3 of the workforce, there's no question that companies need to fight hard to recruit, hire, and retain this population. But we're finding that what used to attract talent is not what attracts today's talent. 89% of millennials prioritize benefits over pay raises, and 83% of millennials would change their job for better benefits. One of the benefits that the millennials are apparently demanding, Malcolm, ongoing training and development. This, according to a Gallup poll, 87% of millennials say that professional training and career growth is very important to them. Malcolm, another one, family benefits, which I can definitely relate to at this particular moment in time. At any given time at a company, a good number of employees are either thinking about starting a family, already pregnant, or struggling to balance work and a young family. Having comprehensive family benefits, whether it be fertility, infertility, pregnancy, maternity, return to work, and parenting benefits, can make one company stand out from the rest.
You know what somebody told me the other day? One of my colleagues is from Italy, and he was telling me that maternity leave and paternity leave over there is normal. Standard is 6 months, and
It's hilarious.
He and his wife just can't wrap their minds around the fact that in the States, like if you work for a quote unquote good company, they give you 3 months, and then it's like, we've done you this great service.
It was great favor.
And he's like, I can't wrap my mind around that. Like, this is just, what are you supposed to do?
Right.
How do you people live like this, you Americans? And I'm just like, well, how long is, like, what do you mean? 3 months sounds like enough time to me. And he's like, that's because you live here.
Right.
Like, I'm telling you, there's better out there. Like,
there's more for you, sir.
Right.
My wife pulled up this graph. I don't know where it was or where she found it, but it showed the kind of like parental leave you get after you have a kid in all these different countries, and literally the United States was at the bottom.
That doesn't surprise me.
I mean, it shouldn't.
That doesn't surprise me.
But it's just so sad. Like, if you have a family, don't plan on like spending any time with it or getting used to it or anything. It's a really unfortunate situation.
That's one of the things that I think, though, will change as the workplace gets younger.
Oh, really?
I think as the workplace skews younger and our cohort has a little bit more say.
Okay.
And it's like, if you really want me to come to that company, here's what it's going to take to attract me there.
Right.
As those things become more normal, I hate to use him as a example because his name's not that great right now, but Mark Zuckerberg, for example, as an example to his employees, took off, I want to say it was 6 months for paternity leave when his wife had their kid. And part of it, he said, was him wanting to take time to spend with his family, obviously, but also he wanted to show to his employees, the guys specifically, if I'm taking time off, you should take that time off when your wife has a baby too, because it's that important. And so I think and Mark Zuckerberg's what, 33, 34? Yeah. So I think as the workplace skews younger and we look at examples like that, and not necessarily our dad or granddad who's like, I took off 2 days when your mom had
and I went right back to work.
And I was right back at work, and whatever. So I think as we get further and further away from that and closer to our own folks having some say, you get a little bit more of that.
Well, hopefully, and you're starting to see that with more progressive companies, as you mentioned. Another item that millennials are asking for, lifestyle support. Beyond free food and beer in the kitchen, millennials want lifestyle support at their jobs. With a quarter of millennials in debt and almost 1/3 of millennials saying that managing a work-life balance is difficult, this group is looking for companies that work with their lifestyles. Millennials are never off the clock, so they prioritize benefits such as flexible scheduling, student loan repayment programs, financial assistance, and fitness discounts, which are all things that like those like cool companies at least dabble in. Malcolm, you've been studying to become a certified financial planner. What do you think ongoing training and development is important to like our peers and to our like generational cohorts?
I do. I have intentionally stayed in positions where I knew that I was making less than I could have if I did something else or went somewhere else because of what I was able to learn at the time.
Oh, wow.
Because I actually subscribe to the mantra that you learn in your 20s and earn in your 30s.
Okay.
So because I was in my 20s at the time, I willfully said, okay, well, I'll take the time and actually like
learn,
slow it down a little bit, get better at my craft, and in that way I'll be able to differentiate myself from everybody else eventually. So I agree with that. I think there is some value to it.
Okay. Now, millennials, I'm wondering, like, is our desire, like you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg wanting to spend more time with his family and also demonstrating for the rest of employees that that's like an important moment, is that like specific to our generation, or is that something that the previous generations were just like super deprived of, so they don't even know what it looks like?
I think everybody has always wanted it since the beginning of time. The problem is the companies owned you before in a way that they don't anymore.
I see.
So like we talk about all the time how folks worked for a company for 30, 35 years and then rode off into the sunset. Well, the thing people were deathly afraid of and your employer was able to hang over your head as a bargaining chip was losing your pension.
That pension, yeah.
Since that doesn't exist to us anyway, there's no loyalty out there for you to be, able to say, well, if you don't do X, then I'm going to Y. Okay. Like, I went to college. I have a degree. I can go get a new job. I know how to be broke because I've been doing that for 10 years. So, what are you saying to me?
Right.
So that dynamic, I think, is a little bit different. But I think the desire of people to want to be home and spending that time with their family and what have you. I think people would take more time off from work if it was like culturally acceptable, especially for folks who have salaried jobs. And
Right.
you're going to make the same money regardless if you take all your vacation time or you take half of it.
Right. The one thing that's interesting to me, though, and this will be my last question before we go to another music break, is it that I wonder if companies, because ultimately for a company to give you extended leave for like when you have a kid in particular, they're making the decision to sacrifice what they're paying you out continuously while you're not working.
Right.
And that's like a long-term view. And that kind of competes with what we know to be capitalism, at least currently, or what it's been. So like, what's the?
I think it's a wash, though.
Okay. What do
If
you
you think about it from a purely economic standpoint, when you start a new job, how long does it take you to actually get up to speed to be able to do the job the way they hired you to be able to do it?
Could take up to like 8 months to a year.
So if I give you 6 months of maternity or paternity leave, I can guarantee that in 6 months I'm going to have a worker who's up to speed, knows how to do things the way they're supposed to be able to do them, and will hit the ground running as soon as they walk in the door.
Right.
If I hire a brand new person, they may flame out.
Right.
They may steal from us. They may all these other things, and it could take
variables.
6 months to a year for them to actually get fully functional and caught up to speed to do the job the way you were able to do it before you left.
Right.
I might be better off just waiting for you to come back,
The 3 to 6 months.
jump into the fold, and stick with what I have. So I think there's the trade-offs there.
Right.
The company, I think, sees that, especially when, like I said, you've got a group of people now who are demanding it more in mass, and it's not a one-off. But something I read, to go to the lifestyle support thing really quickly, something I read today, ironically, in Forbes, was that they surveyed, I think it was 1,000 millennials, and 86% of them, so 860 out of 1,000, said that they would rather their company match their student loan payments than their 401k.
Man.
So the shift from I want to be out of student loan debt way more than I care about saving for retirement is showing this shift in mentality that employers just aren't ready for. Like they're not there seeing that being that significant of a thing because they think about traditional retirement in that way. And so we may see a dynamic shift in benefits offered to employees to include 401k contributions being thrown at student loan repayments instead. Like you get an either or kind of option. Do you want your 3% match over here, or do you want it over here?
I would take that deal. Well,
of course you would.
Well, this is another episode of Manage Your Damn Money. We're talking about hot headlines at the close of this summer of 2018. I want to remind people you can always catch past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Please leave us a rating and leave us a review there. That helps more people catch our show. And if you have a question or you have a topic that you want us to cover, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And of course, you can always catch us on social media. My handle is @MYDM with a 1 on the end. Malcolm, how about you?
At Malcolm on Money.
And of course, you can always catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. This is MYDM with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Where on this conversation, we're talking about hot headlines as we close this summer, things you need to know as we transition into fall. Malcolm, another story that we pulled for this article, another interesting thing, rent versus buy, millennials take a different path to home ownership. This was a September 2018 piece on bankrate.com by Natalie Campisi. As more millennials move up the earnings ladder, get married, and start families, housing is increasingly taking center stage. Though millennials have a higher number of college graduates than Gen Xers and baby boomers, they're less likely to own a home, according to the Urban Institute. In fact, their rate of home ownership was about 8% lower than Gen Xers and baby boomers at the same age. Among the barriers to home ownership, according to the study, delayed marriage, obviously student debt, and then choosing to live in high-cost cities, which is like the catch-22 of our generation. What puzzles analysts is that in many of these cities, the cost of renting versus buying a home is about the same. An analysis by CoreLogic found that the median rent and median home prices in cities with a significant millennial population didn't show meaningful disparities, meaning the rent and the mortgage was about equivalent. In fact, in many markets, the monthly mortgage at the current 4.5% interest rate was around the same amount as renting. Of course, it's important to keep in mind that buying a house encompasses more than just monthly payments, so things like coming up with the down payment and maintenance costs can be a barrier for some. People who live in expensive cities tend to earn more, but they also devote more of that income to housing expenses. And then upfront costs for millennials are challenging. Even if you can afford monthly payments, pulling together a down payment can be a really big problem for most millennial-aged people interested in buying a home. The down payment is just the beginning as well. Buyers should also factor in the property taxes, insurance, applicable home association fees, and repairs. The average homeowner's insurance premium, for example, is about $1,000 a year. And Malcolm, what they did here was there was a chart that kind of outlined the number of millennials, the amount of the median home in the area, and then what it was in comparison to rent. So in Washington, D.C., if I have this correct, it's 35. I don't know what the 35 was for. I wrote something and now I don't remember what it was for. So I just want to make that clear that I halfway don't know what I wrote here. But in Washington, D.C., for example, the median home is about $430,000, and then rent is about $2,200, which sounds about right to me. Austin, Texas, it's $309,000 for a home and about $1,700 for rent. And then San Diego, Carlsbad, California, $560,000 for a home and about $2,300 for rent. And then in urban Honolulu, Hawaii, $570,000 for a home, median price, and then $2,100 for rent, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting, Malcolm. What are some barriers to home ownership for millennials, and where have you seen it get in the way of moving from like renter to owner?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a diversion from the normal scholastic answers that we used to answer that question in the past, and say just plainly, a desire to move from renter to owner is missing in a way that it hasn't before.
Wow.
Like so many people that I talk to that it's just not even a thing.
Right.
Like it's like, well, who cares?
Why would I do that?
Yeah. Like, so I think, once upon a time, it was sold to you that part of the American dream, part of your aspirational desires should be to own your own home.
Right.
And so you have generations and generations of people who every chance they got, they came of age, they got married, they started a family. One of the things that was paramount was we've got to own a home.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about a generation of people who watched their parents lose their homes in 2008 in the financial crisis, or graduated like us into the teeth of the financial crisis, and they look around and go, well, who cares?
Right.
Is that really that big of a thing?
Right.
Do I want to be tied to that anchor that is home ownership? What if I want to move around the country or around the world even 10 times before I'm 70 years old. How am I going to do that if I'm anchored with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt? Those are some of the conversations that I think are starting to be a little bit more persistent among my friends and, travels around wherever having general conversation, where people just don't care to own a home. So that's part of the challenge.
And interesting, as a homeowner who just sent in their first month's mortgage, I actually got to transfer some money to my checking because I got a checking and a savings. I can say that I still feel like, if it wasn't for the fact that we were having triplets, I would still be like, I don't know if it was a good decision because of that whole like tying yourself to something. But then at the same time, you're subject to the rate of rent in the market, and that can fluctuate. And things changing on you. A developer can sell their building and they decide they want to knock the building down. So those are things we are, in theory, like kind of insulated from now. But my experience thus far is that the price for what we're paying is in line with, like, I call granite countertop living in DC. So like if you rent a place for granite countertops, we're about at the same level in terms of what you would pay for that in this area.
That's an interesting title to give it.
That's how I think of it. If you have granite countertops in my mind, then like you're living clean and it's like a nice place. So anyway, that's that, Malcolm. Another story we pulled quickly, moving on. 49% of millennials spend more on restaurant food than they save for the future. This is one of those like typical millennials suck.
Question 2 just answered question 1.
Right, indeed. This is an August 2018 piece on CNBC.com by Emmy Martin, which said that roughly half of all millennials are prioritizing delicious meals today over saving for tomorrow. New data from Lind.edu, which surveyed 1,000 Americans aged 22 to 37, found that 49% spend more on dining out than they put towards retirement. Over 1 in 4, or 27%, are spending more just on coffee than they are managing to sock away. And someone was quoted in the piece, with the way that a retirement account can grow quickly due to compound interest, a consumer might see some great results if they simply don't get a coffee 1 or 2 days out of the week, or eat in every once in a while, and instead put that money into a retirement account. So Malcolm, question for you: are you comfortable with this approach in saving to personal finances, one that like encourages miserly habits to like save for some future?
I am and I'm not. Okay. Like I'm right there in the middle of the road with the folks who are like, you need to save something for a rainy day, and the folks who are like, what if today's my last day? I'm squarely right there in the middle of both schools of thought. And honestly, the way I manage my own money, it proves it. Like I don't save any astronomical amount of my income. I save 9.5% right now for retirement. So
that's pretty high.
That's not miserly to me though. Like I could afford to save more. But then I also could not afford to go to Starbucks, or I could not afford to go to like grab Chipotle on my way home from recording this show with you, or whatever I'm gonna do. Like I could divert the rest of that money also and get all the way up there in the double digits and feel good and pat myself on the back and say, tell my textbooks, yeah, I did it. Like, because that's all that's going to care. But you still got to live life to some degree too. And so I think there has to be a happy medium. But I will say really quickly, at the risk of alienating some of our older listeners, we're not the first generation of people to blow it. The difference is the safety net. Like I've become probably like annoying to older people in the sense that I keep reminding them of that pension, that Social Security safety net that they love to come at me a little high and mighty sometimes from the position of, and I have to remind them that they too splurged all the way through 40 and then all of a sudden had that come to Jesus moment and like, I got to do something about this. So for the next 25 years, they were diligent savers. But for that first 20 years, let's say, you were going to your version of Starbucks or your version of eating out at whatever, and people older than you thought you were blowing it. So, everybody goes through their phases of whatever. I just hope that eventually our generation has that same coming to Jesus moment and says, oh, this isn't going to last forever. Maybe I should actually start to sock it away in a meaningful, And I'm kind of in the sense of whether or not you save every penny. I'm definitely of the thought like you save as much as you can comfortably, but you do have to leave some room to do some,
moderately entertaining things for yourself on a day-to-day basis.
Because then what's it all for?
Nothing. It's just
Like,
for some future moment.
But even then, it's like, I don't want to belabor it. But so I have clients, for example, who are retirees, and they've been diligent savers. I mean, their entire lives, basically, their entire adult lives, they've been doing it the right way.
Okay.
And saving for that down the road, we're going to enjoy it.
Okay.
And now that they're retired, they don't spend any money. So, because you don't lose that mentality all of a sudden because now you've gotten there, because that mentality that got you there is the thing that works. So you can't unlearn that habit. Now you are very tight with your money, even more so in some cases because you don't have that income stream the way you did before. And so
now they're worried about losing it all. So they got to hold
on
to it all.
They've been deferring delayed gratification. And then now you got to the point that you were planning and saving for, and you still won't actually spend it. Like, it's crazy to me that I sit in meetings with clients and I say, you need to spend some money. Like, how do you pay a financial planner to tell you to spend money? But that's essentially where we are. Where I'm like, you need to spend some money.
Go treat yourself.
That's the theme of this meeting today. Spend some money.
That's funny. A little bit more from this particular story before we close the show. The good news is that millennials who do contribute to a retirement fund put an average of $480 away each month, Malcolm, and that, of course, was from the Lind EDU report. But the downside is that far too many, nearly 40%, aren't putting anything away at all. So those folks, you might need to cut back and start putting something away. A recent Go Baking Rate survey found that 46% of young millennials, those aged between 18 and 14, have zero in their banking accounts. Older millennials aged 25 to 34 didn't fare much better. Over 40% have nothing saved. So if you know somebody like that who's a millennial, tell them to listen to this show and maybe we can help with that. But it's interesting, Malcolm, we see these surveys that it's self-reported, you just tell a survey what you've done. Do you think we can trust those, or are these just shots in the dark?
I think you can to some degree because we are a sharing culture.
Okay.
We as younger people tend to share and overshare in a lot of instances. And so people are very willing to be candid about what they have and don't have, what they do and don't do.
Right.
And I'm a little bit reticent sometimes where I'm like, aren't you at least somewhat shamed of the fact that you have saved zero?
Right.
But
I ain't got nothing.
And just proudly will report it. Nope, nothing. So I do think that we can trust it to answer your question.
Okay.
But I'm just amazed sometimes that people are willing to be that honest about things that aren't necessarily that.
Right. Should we take it with a grain of salt that we always see these doom and gloom stories?
Oh no, we're in trouble. Make no mistake about it. That 40 whatever percent of people who are saving zero and they're 30. That causes doom and gloom.
Well, on that note, I want to close this show of episode of Manage Your Damn Money. I want to remind you can always catch past episodes of our show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and of course Spotify. Please give us a rating or leave us a review on any of those platforms. That helps more people catch and watch our show. If you have a question for Malcolm that you want him to answer on his Malcolm's Money Minute, or if you just have a topic you want us to cover, send your suggestion to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And of course, you can always find us on social media. My Instagram and Twitter is @MYDM1. Malcolm, how about you?
@MalcolmOnMoney.
And of course, you can always catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. Thanks once again to our partners here at Montgomery Community Media for another excellent show. And of course, until next time, be good with your money.
Peace.
Peace.